should we get the ball rolling then?
Yeah, let's give it a go. Hopefully this is actually capturing audio. It tells me it's recording, so let's go.
Okay, great. So we'll just clap, count in, then clap, and then we'll go.
All right.
Hang on. Let's think. What am I going to say? We're going to start.
Do we just introduce ourselves, and if we want to if we want to introduce ourselves, do we do our monikers, or do we do our actual first name or whatever?
Probably go with the monikers.
Okay.
But yeah. What's my moniker again?
BlueAxeRacer.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay, so let's go in 5, 4, 3.
Stupid show. My name is BlueAxeRacer.
And I'm PhilosopherKing.
Right, okay, so yeah, sorry about that, but so we decided to do a podcast together. Well, yeah, hang on. I do this thing from every time to time where I just keep saying so well when I can't really think of something to say. But what I was saying is that so we met on Minds.com. And I guess we liked each other very much, and then we had children. No, we didn't have children, but anyway. So we decided to talk about. We decided we actually have a very common interest, other than and being anti-social justice and anti-feminism. But we also have an interest in motorsport and then a couple of other things. So we decided, hey, why not we just start a podcast? So here we are.
Yep.
So first of all, we wanted to talk about the upcoming Malaysian Grand Prix. So, do you have any thoughts and opinions on that one?
Well, I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, so I'm looking forward to a good result for him this coming weekend, especially after struggling in Singapore.
Yeah. Well, certainly, I do think he does definitely need to have a much more forceful control over Nico Rosberg. And by that I don't mean that he doesn't need to, in the bedroom. He doesn't need to do anything in the bedroom. But certainly he does need to provide a more commanding performance. I do think he has been lacking up in recent races, which is something strange to see. I don't think we've ever seen these two be so close as they have been. So it should definitely see a very exciting end to the end of the season. To be quite honest, I used to like Hamilton, but I've sort of fallen out of favour with him just purely because he's American. Sorry, I don't hate Americans, but it's just that I don't know. I just don't like his attitude towards certain things. I don't know. He just wouldn't. I don't think I'd probably try and make him one of my friends if I knew him. I think I probably wouldn't like him that much.
Is it the big personality and sort of the celebrity culture kind of thing?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's that.
It's not very British, is it?
No, it isn't. Certainly not very British. He's a disgrace to our country, and he should be burning in hell.
No. I mean, for my part, I don't mind the celebrity culture thing as long as it doesn't interfere with him doing his job. And I think quite the opposite is true. I think he's found a relaxed rhythm to his life where he can balance his work and his fun. And it's showed in his performances as far as the accumulation of championships over the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, certainly. I don't really have an issue with him being who he is and going out to parties and doing stuff like that. It's just that if I had a lot of money, I probably wouldn't be spending on that sort of stuff. That's sort of what I'm trying to get. That I wouldn't probably work with him, and I'm just thinking, if there's got to be someone I've got to look up to have a personal connection with, he's not my guy.
Right. I understand where you're coming from, but just to provide a sort of counterpoint to that, if you will. If you look at the 70s and the rivalry between James Hunt and Niki Lauda, especially as it was portrayed by Ron Howard in the movie Rush.
That's a great film.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And it shows the difference between sort of the uptight, very mechanical personality and the fun-loving, freewheeling party bloke. And one of the lessons that Niki Lauda says James Hunt taught him was that it's okay to be liked.
Yeah.
So I certainly see a bit of James Hunt and Lewis Hamilton in terms of he's not afraid to have fun.
No, of course not. Although the fun of 1976 isn't really the same as the fun that's 40 years on, though, is it? Though I think it's a different kind of idea. I associate with that sort of the 1976 party sort of person. Strangely enough, I love the 70s as a decade, as a cultural as a cultural pinpoint in history. But I'm just not a fan of like the idea of going to clubs now. I just don't really like modern music, and I'm like, oh god, really? Do we have to do this? Do we have to get stoned? Do we have to do all this stupid stuff?
Yeah,
I mean, there's like
I'm with you on
Dave
that.
Cullen. Yeah, Dave Cullen from Computing It Forever actually sort of did a video on why men shouldn't specifically go to nightclubs and
I've
because
seen
they're going to
that.
get taken advantage of. Yeah, you have. Yeah, and I'm thinking that's probably one of the main reasons why I don't really like nightclubs. I guess the two. How would I put it? It's just they're too misleading, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, so back to Malaysia. Who else do you think you're going to be looking out for this weekend?
Well, I certainly, excuse me, I certainly like Verstappen. Again, because of that very aggressive driving style that's very Hamilton-esque, in my opinion. It reminds me of early Hamilton, where he's so aggressive he almost doesn't know any better than to overtake people. So he's just a lot of fun to watch.
I certainly think he is entertaining, but I do think that from my personal perspective that he is a bit dangerous and maybe needs to get he needs to get himself ahead.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with, especially in the last few races, he's overcooked it a bit.
Yeah, and as of yet, I can't really say that there's one performance this year at least where he's been absolutely astounding. I mean, you've got to take into the fact that if Mercedes hadn't crashed into each other in Barcelona, he probably wouldn't have won. I think.
Well, I'd like to bring up Canada as an example of what I think was an exemplary drive from Verstappen in confounding Rosberg towards the end.
I guess yeah. There are moments like that where you think, yeah, he's a great driver, but I'm not personally convinced yet that he's got the temperament to win races. Maybe he probably will in the future, and he's got a great future ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, remember, he's still a teenager, so he has lots of maturing to do.
Yeah, well, certainly. Although having said that, I went through that teenage phase pretty quickly. Like, I have to be honest. People have always called me really mature and kind of really, professional.
Yeah, I can identify with that.
Certainly. For me personally, I'm just looking forward to a great. I'm looking forward to a great race. But I'd be interested to see what the Ferraris can do. Can they turn around their terrible strategy?
Yeah.
Probably not. Which is, yeah. So I don't know, but
I mean,
yeah,
at least last
I don't
year
know.
they had good success. Vettel taking it to the top.
Yeah. I don't know where that's gone. Where that technical genius has gone.
Well, a lot of it has just been bad strategy calls. I forget where it was exactly, but Vettel was being called in to pit for an undercut, and there was no one anywhere in sight close to him.
I think
front.
that was Germany. I think.
Yeah, and so he laughed and said, "Who do you want to undercut?" And they say Verstappen, and Verstappen was 2 cars ahead of him and nowhere in sight.
Yeah, it's such a shame to see that. To see that they're lagging behind so much. You'd think that off the back of last year they'd be right up there, but they're not. The second best car is Red Bull now,
which is basically a recall of 2014.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about obviously the track's been resurfaced for this year, and I heard a comment from Button during the press conference saying that the track surface was very similar to Russia. Obviously, they haven't driven on it as we're recording this, but they did say that I think it was the same stuff that came from Russia. And obviously, Russia produces. Russia is a track that has low tyre wear, tyre degradation, and I'm just thinking, could Malaysia go from being a track that's very tough on tyre to something where you get almost no tyre wear at all? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, it sort of depends on temperature conditions because Malaysia tends to be very warm and very humid, but also very prone to rain. So if the track isn't rubbered in, they're going to be sliding across the surface quite a bit, and that could cause graining, even if the surface itself isn't very abrasive.
Certainly. I think just purely, I don't know, there hasn't really been much going on in the news in F1 recently, like in the past week or so, other than Perez is apparently having trouble getting a contract signed for next year, but I don't know, maybe these are just rumours or anything, but apparently his sponsors are having trouble, and he doesn't know where he's going to be going, even though he should be getting a seat at Force India. But
I'm wondering if it's one of those minor terms type of issues like with Hamilton's contract last year, where a lot of the delay was just small fine print type stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. But the thing is that obviously when you're Hamilton, it doesn't really matter too much because you're Hamilton, you're going to get the contract eventually. But when you're Perez, you haven't ever impressed to the top team. And you haven't ever won a race or anything, so you haven't really got that reputation to keep you there.
Right. Although that's one of the things that I'm disappointed on Perez's behalf, because he has the skill and the performance. He's finished on the podium 6 times, and he's very opportunistic when there's a race that calls for an unusual strategy. He comes out on top. I'm thinking of, I believe it was Canada 2011 or 2012, where he put on new tires right towards the end and absolutely marched through the field up to the podium.
I just want to point out, right, how did you not distinguish the difference between Canada 2011 and Canada 2012, considering what happened in 2011?
I can't remember that far back very cleanly. Because there's lots of stuff that's gone on in Formula One.
But you can't remember probably what is going to be known as the greatest race in modern history.
What, Canada 2012? What do you mean?
How do you? But Canada? Do you not know what happened in Canada in 2011?
I can't remember that far back.
Oh God! Right. So let me set the scene. So Jenson Button has been put through a serious amount of
yes. I know what you mean.
Right.
The vague terms weren't helping me jog.
Okay, now he gets it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The rain, and then at the end, Button takes on Vettel. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fantastic race.
Yeah.
You know, I actually remember that I was that day I was constructing a model of a Fokker triplane actually, and. Yeah, that's probably. I was like, that was a fantastic race, and it went on for hours. And then obviously they changed channels halfway through, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I can't fault anything wrong with that race. To be honest, I think it's got classic moments. Obviously with Button, with Schumacher. Who finished? I think it was basically it was his best result since his comeback.
Right.
So it's just a great race, and I'm not going to forget that in a long while. Unlike some people.
Yeah.
Right. I think we probably want to move on now.
Okay.
So anybody who doesn't know, so we want to now talk about. So we're on Minds.com, and Minds.com is a social network where essentially you can't say everything you like because the government will come round and kill you if you say something that somebody else doesn't like because our stupid laws, hate speech laws in the UK. But pretty much that's only because of government intervention that you're ever going to be stopped from saying anything. The culture on Minds is very much of a sense of you should be able to say whatever you want and then do whatever you want, and obviously it encourages people to make posts and comments because it gives you a point system for making posts and commenting and liking and all that sort of stuff. And generally speaking, I found it to be it's been a very pleasurable experience for social media. Even if you just take the free speech thing out, then it's just a lot of fun. But anyway, so I guess the other alternative, which has been presented to the anti-social justice community around about the same time, is an app called Candid. However, things aren't really quite as they seem. Do you want to
break it down?
Do you want to expand on that? Yeah, exactly.
Well, basically the controversy has been that Candid has advertised itself as free speech centered, and you're meant to be an anonymous identity, and you can post through this app whatever happens to be on your mind, however you want. The problem is that despite how it's been advertised, in the background there is an AI that is picking up on your posts and your mannerisms and determining what is hate speech or quote unquote poor quality posts, which you can translate as shit posting. And it will exclude those posts from appearing publicly. And eventually, if you run afoul of this system too frequently, you can be kicked off. So the controversy has been that many anti-SJW YouTubers have been contracted by Candid to advertise it as a free speech app. The problem is, whether knowingly or not, these YouTubers haven't been making their viewers aware of this underlying issue with potential censorship by the AI.
Yeah, I personally wasn't. I was miles away there, but yeah, my personal grope is that I've been seeing all of these anti SJW YouTubers, and you would assume that these people would support free speech to an extent. However, these people seem to have just been contacted, by Candid, and they've basically been told to sell products. Now, I don't have a problem with people selling products, but hang on. Oh no. Okay, we've got a tick of hitch here. Frickin' internet, frickin' oh great, my internet dropped out. Absolutely brilliant. Just when I needed it. It does this. Sometimes it just
Hopefully this issue can be edited out, being that we're not going live.
Come on. There is a connection.
Hello?
Right. So at that point in time, I've forgotten what I was about to say, but my internet dropped out just at the right time. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh well. That just randomly occurs sometimes around here. I've noticed it. What did you
Yeah.
just say? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, you just said that. Okay. Okay. Great. Right. So where was I? I was talking about. Oh yeah. So I guess
Candid
my
and
yeah. Oh yeah. So I was saying that my gripe with the YouTubers selling Candid is that I don't really have a problem with them selling Candid itself. Well, no, hang on, no, wait a minute. I thought that was wrong. So I don't have a problem with YouTubers selling things directly through promotions. Not or through sponsoring. Through obviously through advertising, sponsoring videos. But what I do have a problem with is the fact that these YouTubers, you'd think that they would be in favour of free speech. However, they didn't necessarily read the small print, as it were, and they were kind of maybe lured in by just by hearing all the good things about it, and the fact that they've completely missed this out, and then they've basically got thousands of people to go and join this app that they think is all about free speech. It's the alternative to Facebook and Twitter, but when in fact maybe it'll just become another Facebook or Twitter in the end.
yeah. I mean, from my part, I was relatively disappointed in particular YouTubers. Perhaps we shouldn't name names. I don't know if you're okay with that.
Well,
if you'd rather name names.
Well, I kind of rather would, so that the audience would understand what we're talking about a bit.
Okay. So the three in particular that I had in mind were Mundane Matt, Shoe on Head, and Amazing Atheist. I was disappointed not because I think that they did it on purpose. I don't think that's the case. But I think that they, as you say, got... Oops, gone again. Hello?
Yeah, I don't know what happened that time. That wasn't an internet dropout, it was something else. But
Okay.
yes. So what were you saying?
So, I wasn't disappointed in those three YouTubers.
Which three YouTubers? I didn't hear that bit.
Okay, I mentioned Mundane Matt, Shoe on Head, and
Yeah.
Amazing Atheist.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
my disappointment in them wasn't because I believe that they did it on purpose. In fact, I believe quite the opposite, that they were acting in good faith, but as you say, they allowed themselves to be misled, or they didn't read the fine print.
Yeah.
And that therein lies my disappointment,
Yeah.
being that at least in the case of Shoe on Head and Amazing Atheist, they built
Yeah.
their channels on being skeptics.
Yeah.
Not just religious skeptics, but skeptics of various types of things that affect how we view the world.
Yeah. Certainly.
And so to take this social media app at face value and not examine, does it actually do what it says it does, was disappointing for me to see.
Yes, and of course, everybody normally rates channels by their subscriber numbers, but I feel that maybe that's wrong, considering the Amazing Atheist is the biggest guy out there. But I think for me he lacks integrity, if you know what I mean. Just sometimes he says things that don't really make sense to me.
I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a lack of integrity. I mean, maybe there's a case to be made, but very often I think there's an issue of ego when
Yes,
if you make
certainly.
an honest mistake and you get called out on it, you have the tendency to want to protect your ego, so you double down rather than taking a step back and saying, listen guys, hands up, I messed up. And I think that's to sort of transition a little bit, I think that's what we've seen with Mundane Matt.
Yes, certainly. I just kind of wish that people in these situations would just do their research. I think there are obviously some YouTubers, Teal Deer, I'm thinking, Dave Cullen, that do their research, that make sure that what they say is backed up.
Yeah.
And then you just get there are some people that just don't want to do that. They just want to entertain. And I mean, Tilda's kind of talked about this a lot. That there's a slide between being entertaining and being research intensive. But I think that as long as you've actually you've conducted some research, you've actually looked through a few things and on what you're going to say, then I don't have a problem with being entertaining. But you generally do have to check that what you're saying actually adds up. I think otherwise, then you're no better than the SJWs there. I think.
Right. Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I'd certainly say that in terms of your value to the advancement of knowledge, you're not living up to the potential that otherwise could be. But I think the difference between SJWs and anti-SJWs who maybe don't do their research as diligently as they ought to is that the SJWs very often are deliberately deceptive. And they live to obscure actual fact. Whereas I think very often, as I've alluded to before, the issue with some anti-SJWs that don't do their research is that it's still done in good faith, but sometimes their ego obscures their ability to fess up to when they've made a mistake or when they've not done their due diligence.
Yeah. I think if we go back to Minds, and we obviously the main promoter of Minds.com was Dave Cullen, who had a close personal relationship with the creator. I think what sold me for Minds.com was the fact that the creator, is it Phil? Paul? Is it Paul Ottman? I think
Bill Ottman. I think.
Bill Ottman. Yeah, Bill Ottman. He's kind of on our side in terms of freedom of speech, in terms of that sort of thing, and I sort of made my opinion judged based on that. And at first, obviously, when I made an account, I think I kind of had to work out things, and it was difficult to work out. I wasn't sure whether or not this was going to be good, but after a few hours, I was like amazed by how fun it was. But certainly. On the other hand, you have the creative Candid, who was going on about hate speech, and to me that's a red flag. That's just that's a big no-no. I mean, before that, I'd kind of already logged on to Minds by the time I sort of started seeing these YouTubers promote Candid. So I thought, well, I've already got Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and whatever, and then Minds on top of that. I thought, well, I don't need another social network site. And anyway, I think Minds is good enough as it is. But then when I found out when Harmful Opinions released his video pointing out what we've been talking about how it's got a bot that categorises people based on what they say, that was kind of really when I started to hate Candid.
I mean, I was never really interested in Candid.
No.
For me, mobile apps don't really appeal that much because I don't use my phone for internet that much. So I do most of my social media stuff on my laptop. So for me, Candid was never really an option. But in terms of how I came to feel that Minds was a good new place for me to build a social media presence. As you've mentioned before, I heard via Dave Cullen's YouTube channel, and looking into Minds, I liked how it was structured, not just in terms of the social element, like the point system, for example, but also how it's technically structured in that it's meant to be very easily accountable to each individual user. For instance, the encrypted private chat, where not even the Minds company itself can access your chat logs because you can encrypt them.
is absolutely fantastic, and I do hope that it gets more users, in the future.
Right.
Yeah, and that it continues to grow, and that people come and adopt it.
Yeah. I mean, as I've explained it to real life friends of mine, it takes the best elements of social media that already exists and adds the privacy, anonymity, and free speech elements that a lot of these other places are missing. So, in terms of blogging, it has that sort of Tumblr type of aspect where you can blog and share your blog with people. In terms of connecting with other profiles, it has that Facebook type of feel. In terms of sharing videos, and monetization will be coming soon, it has that YouTube type of feel. And in terms of the point system that incentivizes engagement, community engagement, it has the Reddit sort of feel.
Yes, well, certainly. So, Philocki.
You've given me this nickname.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just I kind of helped to. I couldn't help but think. Yeah. So Philocki, how many people have you convinced to join Minds?
So far, 3 of my real life friends have joined Minds.
Oh, good, because I haven't got any of them to join Minds. I think they've all just sort of like, because I don't have any sort of anti-SJW minded people in my real life. I think all of my interaction with that political sphere is online, as it probably is for most people. But as I mentioned before we started, I think I live in a place that's very close to London, where people that work in London live, and they have a very social justice mindset, purely because they're obviously rich, and sort of rich kids tend to be more social justice leaning. And I think, although having said that, my life isn't hell. At least it isn't now. It used to be. But so my mother, for example, I think very liberal. We tend to disagree on a lot of things, but we get along. Actually, it's not impossible. Then, having said that, obviously she's from an older generation. That's maybe not so difficult. But yeah, so certainly, Candid. On the other hand, I don't have any strong, any good feelings about, and certainly seems very, very scary as to what that could become.
Right. I mean, I have my own conspiracy theories about what that AI could end up doing. I mean, not sort of Terminator-esque conspiracy theories, but in terms of the fact that the creators of Candid are former Google employees, or potentially still Google employees, and looking at what has been happening over on YouTube, I'm wondering if the AI, as they've said sort of subversively, being that it's meant to learn personalities and posting habits, if it might not be using Candid as a training ground to be able to then regulate content on YouTube.
Certainly, that's one of the main concerns. That I think the way Harmful Opinions puts it, as an experiment for social justice experiment to figure out what us anti-SJW think, and then stop that sort of speech. And certainly it's a very, very, very scary idea that people have been misled, ironically enough, by their own by their own idols into the dark cave. And so I haven't gone into that cave, so thankfully. Yeah. But do we?
So the did you want to move on to the ICANN?
Certainly. So for those of you who don't know, currently the US owns the internet. Well, because they created it, but and now Yeah, I fucked up on this one. Why did I accept the why did I accept trying to explain it? I don't really have this in front of me. Actually, do you know what? Do you want to explain it for us then?
Okay, I'll do my best.
You probably do me.
ICANN is essentially. Well, I'll give it a try. ICANN is essentially an organization that catalogs all of the domain names and IP addresses of various websites and servers, etc. And currently, ICANN is under the control of a U.S. governmental organization, thereby making all of the internet domain, that is the directory of these domain names, these websites, and IP addresses, beholden to U.S. constitutional law. So the issue here is that President Obama and his administration want to spin off control of ICANN to an international body where each country that is a member of this group has a vote. This can be dangerous because countries with lower free speech standards than the United States will then have a say on what is allowed to appear on the internet and how people on the internet are allowed to interact with various ideas. So if, as we talked about in our previous segment, we think that things like Candid or what's going on with YouTube are bad, imagine what could happen when governments get involved and now have the legal leverage to act on political speech.
That was pretty much as good as anyone could have explained.
That is the gist of the issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's no problem at all. So certainly it's a concerning thing, purely because obviously if this does go ahead, which I think it's looking pretty likely, the US is never going to be able to regain that control of the internet, and as we kind of know, the UN is a bit it's full of pig squills, to be honest, and it's not it's just terrible. It's terrible, to be honest, and it needs major reform in order to ensure that freedom of speech is a value that's held in the UN, and as a result it's a very frightening prospect for the future of the internet as we know it. So yeah, it's a bit disturbing, and
but the good news is that there is still an opportunity to fight this transfer of authority. The U.S. Congress is set to vote on this recommendation on October the 1st. So if anyone listening to this is a U.S. citizen, get in touch with your congressional representative and email them and tell them that you want them to vote no on the transfer of authority.
Certainly do that. I think this is probably one of those topics where we can pretty much say all that we can on that. I think just purely because obviously it's a bad idea, platform that allows anyone to say anything, moving away from control by which is a non-interventional, where you can say anything, to a place where possibly control could be very significant. I mean, potentially, if government see something that they don't like, they can literally just turn off your website like that. Boom. It's it's certainly very, very scary indeed. So I think we've said pretty much all that we can on that one. So, right, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here. I've got a couple of questions lined up. Some of them serious, some of them not so much. Um, so, as we've established, we're both anti-feminists and anti-SJW people, and I was thinking to myself, what do you see as the future of feminism?
Well, I think that it's on the decline in terms of the general population's perception of it. I think most people um, do not find it a worthy ideology to adopt for themselves. This is borne out in statistics both in the US and in the UK. In the US, I believe it's something like 14% of people identify as feminists.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's people in general or if it's women in specific. And I think the UK is in the single digits in terms of people that identify as feminists.
I thought in the UK it was higher. I thought it was 20%, but yeah.
Well, if Milo Yiannopoulos' statistics are accurate, he says it's in the single digits.
Well, I don't know. Who's not to believe that faggot? Well, I don't know.
But in terms of their political hold, it's very much Marxist in what is happening. In that you have a small number of political elites that all believe in it, but the majority of the population doesn't believe in it, but is beholden to the effects of law and policy enforced upon them by the political elite. So I think the cultural attitude is shifting in a way that is positive, but the task is for the people to actually now impress upon their government that they won't stand for feminism any longer.
Yes, certainly. I do myself. I do think that maybe we aren't as different from the feminists as we think we are. Although we oppose it, I think we're generally for the same. I guess we're for the same things that it was originally created for. Just the equal rights in the sense, but it's now kind of morphed into this hideous, malformed creature that's just extremely toxic to society as a whole. Certainly, I think actually. So we've talked about. Hang on. Oh, have we? No, we haven't. So this next question is from. Okay. So this next question is from me. Hang on. What was I going to say? Hang on. Let's not edit this out. But then let's think of a good username to think of this. So can you think of just like a random stupid username for me, please?
Blown Diffuser.
Okay. Blown Diffuser 69 asks, what is Philocky's favourite driver of all time?
Of all time. Well, as I've mentioned, I'm a Hamilton fan, and I was in my mid-teens when Hamilton started. So if you do your math, you can figure out approximately how old I am.
104.
So yeah, absolutely. Centuries. But yeah, Hamilton is my favorite driver. And certainly Senna. I think Senna was very special. And I think the two of them, in terms of their approach to racing, are very fun to watch and make racing exciting.
For me, I would have to say it would be Alain Prost, purely because I think he's kind of got that sort of certain quality of him being very calculated, but also he's just one of those people that's very cool. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like someone who's actually, who was very good at what he did, but at the same time had this sort of I don't know what you call it, but certainly he maintained a pretty long career, and I think his character is just something I really like. I think it's a very mature character, but at the same time sort of a very a very wise character, I think. No, that isn't to say that I hate Senna. I think that Senna is a great driver too, and to be honest, I hold them both in equal regards. To be honest, but I think I side more with Prost purely. I think because of some of the things. How would I put this? That maybe at the end of the day, he's kind of like the underdog, and I like an underdog in a sense. I think not in terms of the results, obviously. Prost had 10 more wins and 1 more championship, but I think for me he's always been inferior to Senna in a way, at least certainly by how the fans regard him, and that he's maybe the bad guy, and that maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I think obviously that was a very important part of the sport's history. So
yeah, I think Senna captured the emotional soul of the fans.
Yeah, and then
in a way that Prost didn't.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, obviously, Prost. Well, Prost is French, and just you can't hate a Frenchman. Well, unless your name's Francois Hollande. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, so what I also really wanted to ask you was what made you become the person you are today. So first of all, what is your political stance, I guess?
Okay. Well, I'm an independent, but I grew up in a liberal household, leaning progressive, but not quite as ridiculously progressive as a lot of people are nowadays, but still relatively left-leaning. But as I sort of became more aware of the gender issues that men and boys face, and the deliberate deception involved in that, and how the left has been party to that, it sort of put me off. And the more and more issues I looked into, the more and more I found out that the left, at least in the Anglosphere, has been, and very much in other Western countries, has been very manipulative and deceptive. And if there's one thing I absolutely hate and cannot stand, it's being emotionally manipulated and being lied to. So I'm an independent. I lean libertarian. I started out more left libertarian, but I find that as I say, more and more stuff comes up, I sort of gravitate more right libertarian.
Well, I guess in my personal situation, for a very long time, I probably would have been classed as a liberal, in a sense. Not that I was strongly liberal, but I guess I probably would have gone along with what a lot of liberals would have said. And certainly I noticed, kind of a couple of years ago, I kind of noticed that there were certain things on the BBC I was certainly being very oddly, I was thinking something's not right here, and I couldn't really quite explain what. But then I found Thunderfoot, and then I thought, well, and of course he hasn't. I don't think he's ever addressed the BBC directly. I mean, he might have done. I can't remember. But anyway, he was, obviously he was, big with the Anita Sarkeesian, and obviously her portrayal of, the gamers. And I was starting to think, well, yeah, these people are certainly not exactly portraying the truth, and they're kind of demonising people. Maybe they're really just ordinary people who just want to have a good life. And I found an issue with the fact that feminism finds something wrong with everything. I think that that I'm not really pleased with that. And then one day I was doxxed for saying something on the internet, and then I really hated feminism.
Yeah.
It was quite a long and difficult story. Something that's really kind of made my past year or so hell. and only recently have I sort of escaped from it truly. But yeah, it was quite a interesting thing. I got blocked. I got banned out of a Facebook group a few months afterwards, because I found out that these people were, these people were probably social justice supporters, and they didn't like what I was saying. So I got blocked out. I got banned, and I was an admin. So that group in particular, I had run for the previous or so before that. So it was very sad to see something like that go, but then I just realised I didn't want to be with these people anymore. I've actually made a video on this on my YouTube channel that kind of explains it in better detail, I think, which maybe you want to go and check after the end of this video. I would warn you, it is quite a controversial thing that I'm talking about, so yeah. But anyway, so next up, I want to talk a bit about your love life. So how's it been with the ladies?
Well, for me, I've come to live by the MGTOW philosophy. So, a lot of people have different interpretations of MGTOW, including many self-identified MGTOW themselves. So, perhaps I should give a brief explanation of how I view it, and that will sort of connect into answering your question more directly. For me, the MGTOW philosophy is about a man's right to self-determination, self-respect, self-care, self-ownership, and intrinsic human dignity. So how that relates to how I perceive relationships, I don't necessarily mind being in a relationship as long as I am sure that those principles will be protected. So if it's a relationship where I am expected, by virtue of me being male, to be provider, protector, all these different requirements usually imposed solely on males, without a reciprocal from the female, I will simply refrain from that relationship. I don't think it's healthy to have such an imbalance.
Sorry, I just
and because
there,
our
sorry.
culture, no worries. Yeah. So in terms of the cultural prevalence of a lot of the negative aspects of femininity as they are socialized, I simply refrain from relationships for the most part. I'm willing to give someone a chance if I can be sure that they will not be violating those principles. But being that such a woman is relatively rare to come across, I'd much rather be cautious and miss out than be reckless and find myself in a load of different problems that I didn't need to be.
Well, for me, I believe that one should really be in control of one's future. That it is down to you to be, that you're responsible for the actions that happen to you, and therefore, but at the same time, obviously, there are some things that you can't control. But in I haven't ever had a relationship, so I haven't actually gone out and experienced what it's like to be in a relationship, and I'm obviously a virgin.
I should mention neither have I.
I thought as much. But anyway, so I guess I'm in my final year of college. I want to go to university next year, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be finding a girl there, and I'm thinking when I get there, I'm going to have to kind of be really cautious in the way I do it. But at the end of the day, I do want to end up in a relationship, and I do want to have kids eventually, because I want to just pass something on, but then also I want to actually have someone good in my life that makes my day, really, I think. And
yeah, I can certainly identify with that. I mean, I'm not so much interested in having kids. I mean, I suppose that's a philosophical discussion for another time. But in terms of, as you say, someone who makes your day and having someone to share life with, I do think that's valuable, and I think that there are inherent human needs that contribute to our tendency to seek such a relationship. I just think it's unfortunate that our current culture has hijacked those needs to extract more utility out of men.
Certainly. It's a real shame the way it's going, that, you know, we could yeah. So we can, you know, we could potentially wipe ourselves out if we're not careful. That we've got to make sure that the relationships between the sexes are good. That we don't just walk out on each other. We don't, you know, expect. We can expect certain things of each other, but we can't. You know, we can't say. Ensure that men are. You know that they have to work hard, but then they also have to be in two places at once. That they, that they have to be providing for. So I guess I wouldn't expect men to provide for their family in two different ways. What I mean by this is that you provide for your family by working hard and earning money that goes into the pot, or you spend time looking after the children. You know, you look after everyone by just being, by dedicating time to your family. I guess you got to find a balance, but I guess you can't have too much of both. And I think that feminists kind of want men to have too much of both, and that's kind of really quite sad. But so I think we're going to lastly head on to the political climate. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on, first of all, the European elections and then the American election.
Mm-hmm. By European elections, do you mean EU, or do you mean Britain?
Well, we could talk a bit about the EU, I guess, but I was thinking more in specifically the German and the French elections, which are next year, I think.
Okay. Shall I talk about Germany first, then? So, I think people who would be listening to this probably know the situation in Germany. But just a very brief recap. Angela Merkel is Chancellor of Germany, and her Christian Conservative Party. Are they the Christian Conservative? I think that's what
I thought it
they're
was
called,
Socialist Democrats. Was it?
No. Anyway, title of the party being not as important. Their policy being what is the critical bit. They've been basically their policy is open borders. So they're in the middle of Europe, but they want migrants to come to Germany, which necessitates these migrants coming through other European countries. And the reason that they want these migrants to come is because they believe that they have a social justice obligation to refugees from war-torn countries. The problem is that most of the migrants that show up in Europe are economic migrants from other parts of the Middle East and North Africa, and not necessarily from places like Syria or Afghanistan that are under the scourge of war against ISIS. So with all these migrants showing up by the millions, the cultural fabric of places like Germany and other parts of Europe are changing rapidly, such that the German people can no longer have an expectation of safety and security. So Merkel, realizing that she's now in a particularly precarious political situation, has been trying to suppress people talking about the flaws in her policy and criticizing the migrants that have come and the crimes that they commit. And the result has been an incredibly large backlash politically against Merkel and her party, such that they've been losing power hand over fist in German state elections.
There's been a rise of what's the party called from the far right? I can't remember what it's called, but
Pegida?
what's that? What? I don't know.
Is it
Might
Pegida?
be, I don't know. Let me have a look. German political party. Right, so we've got. I think
Oh, ADF?
it stands for. Well, Alternative for Deutschland. Yeah, them. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the ADF has been gaining power in German state elections. And in Berlin, Merkel's party has been kicked down to number 3 by ADF, which forecasts that Merkel's party will likely be out of federal power come next year's elections. And I wouldn't be surprised if Merkel gets completely removed from her party, given that she's completely messed it up.
Certainly.
And shall we move on to the United
France,
States? Or
we said France.
France? You want to do France? Okay, let's go on to France then.
Yeah, so...
I'm not as familiar with France,
right,
so
fine.
you'll have to help me out.
So, in France you have a left-wing party which is headed by the current president, Francois Hollande. Then you have the sort of, I guess, centre-right party, which is headed by the former president Nicolas Sarkozy, and then you have the far-right party, which I can't remember the name of, who is headed by Marine Le Pen. Obviously, France has been through a tough time, as has Germany, in the past few years, having, of course, multiple terrorist attacks, the one in Paris in November and more recently in Nice. And generally the consensus is the same, is that the open border policy isn't particularly well liked in France, and that there could be a challenge for the of Hollande, although it's very difficult to tell out of Sarkozy and Le Pen who might be the stronger power in next year's elections. However, certainly, there is obviously the trend of the rise of the far right in Europe, and so certainly I guess it's a tricky time for France. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. But so do you want to spend a penny?
Yeah. The issue with the discussion between the left and the right that I find very interesting, and the likes of Sargon of Akkad has mentioned in many of their videos before, is that the left is creating the very monster that they profess to fight against, in that their policies and their rhetoric has created such damage and such frustration that it's pushing people to the right in reaction to the effects of the left's policies. Case in point, as we mentioned with Germany, the ADF gaining power as a result of Merkel's policies. So the similar things happening in France, as you mentioned, with Le Pen's party gaining power because of things that Hollande has done and said, including his comments after, I believe it was the Nice attacks, where he said, we'll just have to learn to live with terrorism.
Very much akin to what Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, said, who he's basically said that Londoners should expect terrorism to be like a part of everyday life or something like that. And so he's a Muslim, so of course he would say that,
which is absolutely unprecedented. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible to me that elected politicians would sell out their citizenship, to whom they have a primary duty of care, for people who hate the very society that these politicians profess to be representing.
Certainly.
It's unbelievable to me.
I guess we can talk about the UK a bit. So currently, since the Brexit vote, so currently since the Brexit vote, what happened was that David Cameron, who was a strong Remainer, resigned, and then we had Theresa May shafted in her place, in his place, and so far, I'm not sure what I think of Theresa May. I know she's a career politician, and I know that she's kind of, I don't know, she might come out in favour of something that I don't like, and obviously you've had numerous feminists cite her as an example that women should be in power, and when obviously you have the case of Merkel, which is an example where women definitely shouldn't be in power. I'm not talking about women in general, I'm just saying that obviously feminism tries to use all the good examples to say that women in general are good, and that if it's a woman, it should be, it should be there. However, having said that, Theresa May does look like she might be. She's just kind of. She knows, unlike other politicians, Owen Smith, who was a candidate for the leader of the Labour Party, who lost out to Jeremy Corbyn, who maintained his seat. She's said that if it's that essentially that we shouldn't actually be trying to stay in the EU. We shouldn't try to pass the Parliament shouldn't try to pass legislation saying that we can't leave the EU. So that's one thing that's good for going for her. Jeremy Corbyn and his Labour Party, at least he also agrees with Theresa May in the sense that we shouldn't bar the will of the people, which is good. But then obviously he's a sort of a very sort of left-leaning person, so I can't really associate with him. The Liberal Democrats, who I used to like, have now kind of gone down the pan a bit. I guess they have become probably the most feminist party currently in Parliament at the moment, I think. And yeah, I just do not like what they have to say. And then UKIP, they've just had a new leader. I can't remember her name. I know it's a woman, but I do think that obviously as we've mentioned with the trend of far right parties in Europe, they're going to be on the rise, and I generally agree with what they have to say in quite a lot of cases, and I think that maybe they want to be there to basically to shut the big boys up, to make sure that to fact check them, to sort of show them up, which I think is maybe a good thing. So yeah, so that's the UK elections. So we want to now move on to the US election, which is only 6 weeks ago, no, almost 5 weeks ago now. So yeah, so what are your thoughts on that? Would you?
Well, it's a big mess. I think most Americans.
Yeah.
I think most Americans are frustrated and fatigued at our political system, especially being that we only have two strong parties. So by virtue of not wanting to waste your vote, a lot of people reluctantly will vote for one of the two candidates, even though they'd like to see more options. So before I get into the sort of Clinton versus Trump thing, I was going to bring up the two alternative candidates, Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party and Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party. Jill Stein sort of came out of nowhere in the last couple months after the DNC scandal, where Clinton was basically shoveled into the nomination for the Democratic Party, screwing Bernie Sanders over. And so Jill Stein got a bit of public notoriety by inviting Sanders to join her and the Green Party. And from there, she's been sort of the replacement Bernie Sanders for a lot of the far left progressive types. So, in as much as she is trying to hold the system accountable, I think she's commendable. But in terms of her actual policy content, I disagree vehemently with most, if not all, of her positions. Moving on to Gary Johnson, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about my sort of political orientation, I have libertarian inclinations, so a lot of his policies I like, but I think his representation on behalf of the Libertarian Party isn't becoming of what I hope the Libertarian Party will eventually be recognized as. For example, his outburst at during an interview about immigration, in which he basically had a social justice warrior moment about you can't call them illegal immigrants, despite the fact that by the very function of language, people who come into a country illegally are illegal immigrants. So that to me gives away his mentality on certain issues that I disagree very strongly with. So then coming over to the Clinton versus Trump issue, as I mentioned earlier, I have gotten very disaffected with the left in the United States because of the political chicanery and manipulation. And nobody embodies that more than Hillary Clinton. And that's becoming more and more evident every day as more and more leaks come out, as more investigative documents come out, as our Congressional Oversight Committee interrogates the FBI and key witnesses to Clinton's email scandal and into the foundation. So even before we get into Clinton's policy, she's already completely written off as far as I'm concerned. In terms of policy, she's very much like Merkel in that she'll say and do anything for votes. So it's really hard to pin her down on what exactly she believes in, aside from her own ascent to power, her own ambition. She's very narcissistic in that sense. She'll change whatever policy she had before, or espousal of policy, in order to curry up some votes. In terms of Trump, I think my thoughts on him are very complicated, so I'll try and be as brief as I can, but still be thorough. I am apprehensive towards Trump because I think he has his finger on the pulse of the American psyche. I think he understands why and what it is about American politics that a lot of people are frustrated with, especially as it pertains to social justice warriors and PC culture. I think the problem with Trump, though, is that he's very reckless in how he expresses his understanding of these issues, so it makes him very difficult to palate for moderates and for left-leaning people, which then puts a strain on his campaign to win the election, and also on his supporters to justify their support of him. But I think, as Milo Yiannopoulos said, I think Milo's analysis is spot on. Trump is a cultural candidate. He's not so much about policies as he is about the meta consciousness of American political culture.
Yes, well, I don't think we've even brought up the fact that that Hillary, we haven't even brought up Hillary's health yet. So, obviously Hillary's health is being pretty majorly covered up by the media, and you have to wonder, is that really someone that you can put in power if they're going to be prone to those sorts of that amount of stress, and that and yet somehow isn't something not quite right about her. And then I also don't like the fact that basically she, has interviews with celebrities. I'm pretty sure that she's been endorsed by Katy Perry and a few other people, and the fact that she's trying to get through to the young vote just by saying, by just simply getting these endorsements. So Katy Perry says, "I stand with Hillary Clinton, because she has vag, therefore you must vote with her." I think that means that people aren't allowed to think for themselves, that they aren't actually allowed to come up with their own opinions on this, and that, I'm not really happy with the way that she does that, and obviously she's a lying bitch, so I really don't like her.
Absolutely.
Trump, on the other hand, I do think that at least with Trump in the White House, I think there will be a turnaround in the views of the country in general towards social justice and political correctness. I do think that obviously he has caused some controversy, but at the end of the day, he seems to be like the best candidate by virtue of being the least worst, as it is in most cases in modern politics. But I think to be quite honest, I have to say that I would rather have Trump as British Prime Minister than Theresa May. So I can say that I can kind of support Trump more than any candidate for my own political system. That is. So yeah. And I guess you can see why I would say that. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. It's as we're recording, it's 20 to 11 for where I am. Not that I'm particularly tired. I could probably go up all night, but I've got college tomorrow and stuff like that. So I think we might have to round this off, and hopefully I can get it up in the next couple of days. And so as we might have established, this has been the Secret Show. No, hang on a bit. Right. So I've just told you, right, the real reason why I called it the Stupid Show, because the Secret Show was like one of my favourite kids' TV shows. You can go check it out. It's like amazing. It's like it's like kind of like a real proper like comedy spy genre TV film, where you have two agents that are saving the world, but then they're from very, very stupid situations. I do recommend that you go watch it out, and it's hilarious, and it's got great catchphrases and like stuff, and it's like amazing, and oh my god, I thought brings back childhood memories. I can still sing the theme tune, or whistle, or hum the theme tune, and it's just amazing, great show. I'm pretty sure there's some episodes on it on YouTube, but anyway. So other than that, we call it the Stupid Show because we just wanted to talk about whatever shit we wanted to talk about, be it politics, be it whatever, and it's a great project. I really want to look forward to doing more of these in the future. So should we finally round it off? So Philosophy, do you want to round it off?
Yes. Sure. Not quite sure what else there's to say in rounding it off, except that it's been a pleasure. And as you say, I look forward to doing this again sometime.
I'm stuck in my bed. Oh no, hang on.
Yeah.
Right, let's just leave it on that. Hang on.
Right. Well, signing off. This is PhilosopherKing.
There we go. Done it. Hey. Right, because what I do is I always rest it. I'm sitting like
trying not to injure yourself.
It's a raised bed, but it's sort of like the well, I usually like to put my arm on the bed, but then but there's a sort of a small wooden gap, and it keeps getting stuck if you bend it. But anyway, so I've been BlueAxeRacer, and we shall certainly see you all next time.
And this is PhilosopherKing.
And no, I've bottled it up, but whatever. Anyway, so do you lemons? Wait. Okay, fine. Right, so nobody understands what I mean when I say that, and it's already gone on far too long, and I have a habit of doing this. But anyway, so do you lemons means do you genuinely agree with what I say? That's my speak for that.
What's that? You've got.
Oh right. Oh great. Right. So do you lemons, or means do you genuinely agree with what I say? Then.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes, I do.
All right. So, bye guys. And that's how I'm ending it. Okay. Fine.
See ya.
Okay. Right. There we go. Right. That's the show now officially over. That's just there so that I can mark the end of it. So yeah.